Hey booktube, this is Mickey and I'm here today with another video. One of my goals for this month is to try and do Vita, which is vlog every day in August. So this will be my third video for the month of August, so we'll see how it goes. But what I wanted to talk to you guys today about is, and I might ramble a little bit in this video because in all honesty, I keep trying to write a script and try and figure out what to say for this, but I guess the reality is I don't really know what my thoughts are on this, and I'm kind of curious to hear what you guys have to say about it. But it's about how do we address certain issues of how do we address the isms in literature from different time periods than our own. So what I mean is we live in a time period now where we are much more aware and much more willing to try and give good, decent representation of all groups of people, or at least we attempt to do so. We still got work to do in that regard, but we're definitely better than we were, say, 20-30 years ago. So I wanted this video today to be about my experiences reading Gone with the Wind so far, and about a sort of question that I sort of came up with as I was reading it about how do we treat literature from different time periods, because we definitely live in a time period now where we are a lot more conscious of the way in which we represent different cultures and different underrepresented groups in our literature. We still got some ways to go in that regard, but we definitely pay way more attention to it than we did, say, 40 years ago. And so what I am interested in is trying to figure out how do we have conversations about these elements in these pieces without brushing over them and excusing them, because I'm finding that what tends to happen is we tend to say, well, that was the way people thought in that time period, and then we just kind of brush past it, and I feel like that's probably not the best way to do it. So I was just curious about how you guys deal with it and what you guys do, and just wanted to start a conversation about it. So I've been reading Gone with the Wind for a little while, and I actually ended up getting into a bit of a reading slump while I was reading it and ended up having to put it aside because it was pissing me off a lot. So Gone with the Wind, if you don't know by some chance, is a American novel set during the Civil War, and it is, well, set during the Civil War and the period after it, and it's been called an ode to the Old South. We follow Scarlett O'Hara, who is a Southern belle, the child of a plantation owner, and we follow her as she deals with the aftermath of the war and so on and so forth. And Scarlett O'Hara is like a very, 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 I mean, I can't lie, I love her as a character. I really do love her. She is a character that you love to hate. She is hot-tempered and shallow and self-centered, and but she's a fighter also, and she's a person who really works hard for, I mean, well, not works hard, but really tries for what she wants. You know, she doesn't let people walk all over her, and you know, and she doesn't necessarily kowtow too often to things that she doesn't believe or really feel. And so that makes her interesting. She's complex and interesting. And for the most part, I enjoyed following her journey. But one of the things that happens with Gone with the Wind is that there are a lot of slave characters that Scarlett interacts with. But I was really surprised when I was reading it about how often the slave characters got to speak. I feel like in most books that I read from this time period that were written by white authors, the slave characters are often minor characters. They're minor characters, they're in the background. We don't really get to hear from them that often. And so we get to hear from the slave characters a lot in this book. Characters in this piece are extremely stereotypical. They're very minstrelsy. The descriptions of them, their actions, the way that they act are just really, really, I mean, they're really offensive. And I just kept getting, as I was reading, I just kept getting angry and frustrated. And eventually I ended up having to put the book down because I literally dreaded having to pick it back up. I found that, again, like for me, the issue was that when Scarlett, like I got about halfway through, I'm at the point in Gone with the Wind where Scarlett is, the Civil War, the Confederate soldiers have just retreated, and Scarlett has just gone back home to Tara, and she's trying to pick up the pieces there. That's where I'm at right now. And when she was in Atlanta and she was having her little issues and things in Atlanta, I was okay with the story, but that was because the black characters in the piece are in the background in the story. But when she goes back to Tara, the black characters start to take more prominence because the black characters are there. There's 3 slaves who have stayed behind while the rest of the slaves ran off for freedom, which they are chastised for doing. We're made to believe that these 3 slaves who stayed are loyal and good human beings because they stayed, and the ones who ran away are bad. That's just how it's depicted in the piece. And I don't know, it was just super hard for me reading this novel when we got to that point, because just the blatantness of the racism really came out to me. The thing is, here's the thing, because people always say that we have to think of the time period in which the piece was set, which I definitely agree with. I agree with the fact that we need to think of the time period in which this book was set. During the time period in which this book was set, it would make complete sense for Scarlett O'Hara to be a racist. Of course she would be a racist. There's no, I mean, that's kind of exactly what I would expect for a character of that regard. But I feel like there's a difference between a book that has racist characters and a book that is racist itself. When we see these racist depictions of black people, that's not us seeing the black people from Scarlett's point of view. That's us seeing the black people from the point of view of the author. Like, let's be real and let's be honest. And one of the ways I know this is because we have a foil to Scarlett O'Hara, who is Rhett Butler, and he's there, and he's this one who has this kind of clear-headed view of the South. And the book is actually really, really critical of the South, which I think is super interesting. It's critical of the South's traditions and its arrogance and all of these other things. So it's not a book that's just like, oh, hail the South, and we're all perfect and we never did anything wrong. Like, the book is actually critical of them. It just isn't critical on, it's just not critical of them and their practice of slavery. At least not where I am at in the book. Y'all can let me know down below if that changes, but where I'm at in the book, it is not critical of their use of slavery at all. In fact, Rhett Butler says things that supports, again, like I said, Rhett Butler feels like the foil to Scarlett O'Hara, and he says racist things just as much as she does. So that, again, makes me think that the message in the book is racist. It's not just that the characters are racist, it's that the book itself has very racist overtones. It's very clear. Scarlett O'Hara has this line, she says it over and over repeatedly. She says, she'll say the line that, oh my gosh, I can't believe the Yankees want to free them. She's talking about the black people. And this would be an interesting line if it weren't for the fact that she almost always says it after a black person has done something that makes a lot of sense for why she would say it. Like, the black people in the novel are just really silly and superstitious. They need a white person to tell them what to do. In times of crisis, in each of the times of crisis, the black people don't rally together and take care of themselves and take care of their own. They need a white person to come in and tell them what to do. Like, it's so, I just can't. I really can't. At least not right now, I can't. I don't know if that's going to change later. But I kept trying to figure out how it is that other people were able to read this book and not be as enraged by those depictions as I am. And I feel like people are saying, and I feel like what it is, people say that they looked at it objectively. Like, they just look at it, I guess, from the view or the lenses of the time period. But I don't get it. I really need I really want explanation. And this is not like an indictment of anyone who loves Gone with the Wind. My grandmother, her favorite movie of all time is Gone with the Wind. It's part of the reason why I wanted to read the book in the first place. So, and I can definitely see the appeal of it. Like I said, the story is definitely enthralling. The characters are really interesting. It's well written. There's just that racism in there. And it's like, I don't know how to address that type of thing, because I do get it. I get it. Margaret Mitchell was not writing in a time period where someone's going to sit down with her and say, hey, this is, she probably wasn't writing in a time period where there would have been people around her who would have been able to say, hey, that's really racist, and you might not want to say that. But at the same time, it's like, I know that Gone with the Wind got, like, backlash for being racist. Like, this isn't, like, it wasn't as if there weren't people who spoke up about it. I mean, it wasn't as loud of an outcry as it would be if this movie was made today, but there was outcry about it. There were people who recognized it. So I don't know if it's really fair to give her a pass just because she was following, I guess, the majority, what the majority thought was. Like, I don't know. Like, I actually really honestly don't know how to engage with these things. And one of the things that I thought about as I was reading this is I thought about the time when I encountered the racism in the book Peter Pan. So if you read Peter Pan, you know that there's the Redskins, which we are already going into racist territory there. And there's a scene where Peter Pan, he saves Tiger Lily, if I'm not mistaken. And after he does so, he like comes back and he's like the big hero, and the Native American characters literally bow down to him and call him their white savior. I don't need to talk about how racist that is. It's clearly, the racist overtones in that piece are very clear. And I remember feeling super uncomfortable with it when I read it. And I remember being like, oh my God, that is so bad. But I finished the book. I finished Peter Pan. I liked Peter Pan. I brushed over that racism. I said, well, and I said exactly the same thing that people say about Margaret Mitchell. I was like, well, J.M. Barrie was writing during a time period where that is what white people thought about themselves in relationship to Native Americans. They did think that they were saving them. And so I thought that, and I brushed over it. And I realize now that a huge part of the reason why I brushed over it, and I'm willing to admit it because I'm pretty sure it is the truth, that it's because it was about a group that I didn't belong to. The group that was being insulted, the group that was being, whose history was being distorted, whose image was being screwed with, wasn't a group that I belonged to and personally felt a part of. And so it didn't personally affect me as much as it would have if it had been black characters. And I can't help but wonder if that's part of the reason too why I don't know. So I don't know. So what do we do, I guess is the question. Because I don't believe that we should ban these pieces of work. I don't believe that we should not read these pieces of work, though I am not sure I'm going to finish reading Gone with the Wind. I have to be honest. But how do we discuss these pieces of work so that we acknowledge the ways in which they are wrong, but still look at them artistically? I don't know. Like I said, I think I knew when I was gonna try and do this video that I was not gonna be able to just like have like clear points, because I don't really know what my points are. I don't really know, because I guess I feel like there has to be a way where we can have dialogue about the pieces without skipping over it. Because I feel like there's this desire, this idea that the only way I can like this is if I pretend like it's not there. Like, I feel like some people feel like the only way that they can like Gone with the Wind, the only way they can like it is if they pretend like their racism isn't there, or if their racism isn't a big deal. And it is. It's a big deal. I can imagine that there were people who read this book, who saw this book during that time period, black people who saw the movie and stuff, and were really offended by what they saw. So we can't pretend like it's not a big deal, because it is. But then it's like, I guess, what do we do with that? Like, I don't know. It's all these hard questions. So I guess I had a question for you guys. I have a couple of questions, I guess. The first question is, what do you do? Have you ever put down a book because you thought it was offensive? And what influenced your decision to do that? Have you ever not put down a book that you found offensive? And what was the reasoning behind that? How do you deal when a piece that you love is got some issues with it, you know, got some problems? It's sexist or homophobic or racist. Like, how do you deal with your love for that piece? Do you just, I mean, what do you do with it? And also, if you think I should finish Gone with the Wind, let me know why, because right now I'm thinking about DNFing it. Some of the depictions that I found like really offensive in Gone with the Wind, the first one that really got to me was the description of Prissy. Prissy is always described with rolling eyes. They'll say Prissy and her, you know, Prissy with her rolling eyes, or Prissy's rolling eyes. And when I say rolling eyes, I don't mean like I got an attitude, so I'm, you know, I'm cutting my eyes at somebody. It's like rolling eyes like I'm mentally deranged and I don't have the capacity to control my eyes. Like, the idea that she's like this really foolish, she's very much a fool type character. And then the other thing that what made me put the book down eventually, because I was like, I can't take this right now, especially in light of like recent events, especially dealing with race relations in America right now. I was like, today is just not a good day for this. Was when Scarlett, who gets the brilliant idea to go check the slave cabin, check the gardens near the slave cabins. Why the slaves wouldn't have thought of that themselves, considering that they would know that they were there, it's beyond me. But the slaves are so superstitious that they're too afraid to leave the house to go search for food. So they're basically just sitting in the house starving until Scarlett comes along and says, oh, well, I'm gonna go down the hill and check the slave cabins at our neighbor's house. And she goes to the slave cabins. She's tired, she's overwhelmed by all of it, and she's pulling these vegetables out of the ground, and she smells the niggerly smell coming from the slave cabins, and she vomits. Yeah. couldn't do it. So I don't know, you guys need to let me know reasons why. If you think I should finish this book, you gotta let me know reasons why I should suffer through more of that, because I'm pretty sure more of that is coming up, and I don't really know why. Because I don't need to, I guess if I felt like I needed to read that, experience it, to know what my ancestors went through, or to know what it was like, maybe I would do it. But I don't need to read that to do that. I feel like there is much better written work that would help me to understand that better. And I've seen these images. I mean, I see these images sometimes on TV today. Like, I don't necessarily feel like I need to be exposed to it more. There might be other people who might benefit from being exposed to it, but I don't really know if I'm that kind of person. So I'm a little resistant to finishing the book. So seriously, if you think I should finish it, I'd really like to know why, because I need some convincing. All right.